Okay, welcome back everybody. We're in my wormery and it's feeding time. I have here some clippings from the garden. It's tomato leaves. And in the other bin we've got some fruits. We have and some veggies, apples, banana peels, and some asparagus. I guess the objective was to consolidate and get myself down to 4 bins, but you can see I'm back up to 6 bins. But you might remember that those 2 bins right there without labels on them, those are really, the compost in those bins was collected out of 3 active bins about 2 weeks ago. And since then I've set up a horizontal migration within those bins to allow the lingering residents of the compost exit the material over into the new feeding zone. And also allow some time for the cocoons to hatch and give those baby worms a chance to exit the material. Now these other 2 bins dated September 19th. Those were launched using the worms that were collected from those 3 harvested bins. So the worms went into 2 new bins, the compost went over there, and today we're going to feed the feeding zones in the compost, and we're going to feed these 2-week-old bins for the first time. I'll put on a rubber glove so we can get started, and maybe we'll even see some worms while we're at it. Okay, here we go. Alrighty, I'm going to begin with these newest bins. Let's aim things down here a bit. These are now 2 weeks old. This is the first feeding in these bins. So when I built these bins, there was no focus for the feeding. There was just no concentration of food in any one place. So I'm not really expecting to find a jumble of worms in any one particular place either. I'm just going to assume that the worms have colonized the space in a kind of an even distribution. I'm going to move some of these leaves off to the side so we can use them as cover later. I did start these bins with a tremendous number of worms, a very large number of worms. So I'm confident in the fact that there's plenty of them in here. Alright, so the food that was in here is still abundant. But as most of us know, the food that they eat isn't always readily available to them right away. We need a little bit of time for the microbes to start working on the material, and then they can move in and start their consumption. Or something like that. I'm not sure. I don't know all the details. Just repeating stuff I've heard on the web. Alright, so let's see. I guess we'll have a whole apple that I could put into each of these bins. I have enough to do an extra. So why don't I give this bin 2 apples. I'm going to keep it whole. I'll just give it a little slight sprinkling of asparagus. These are banana peels. I'll throw in a banana peel. Okay. So we'll give portions around that size to each bin. With the exception of the apple, this is the only bin that'll get 2 apples. Last thing is going to be a handful of tomato clippings. Try to ration this in an equal fashion too. So we'll just do something like this. How does that sound? I guess we could level this all out again and bring the leaves back in as the primary cover for the whole top surface. Try to level things off here again a little bit, since I did lift things up to make that hole in the middle. At this point I can use my traditional feeding zone indicator just in case I decide at some point in the future to move the feeding zone around. I like to use the coffee filter as an indicator of where the feeding was. Okay, moving on. I know the folding on this piece of paper is not very good. At some point I'm going to refold it, try to make it look more symmetrical. Much of the same. These bins were built in an identical fashion, so we should expect to see more or less the same thing we did before. This piece had kernels on it, and you can see them all getting worked down. That's a real popular spot, it seems, right now, underneath that gushy and gooey cob. Let's take some of this existing food out of the way. So we can drop in an apple and some other similar stuff. Alright. So even though there's no particular feeding zone here, that one cob did seem to attract a large number of feeders. So this right here, you could feel it. It's just nothing other than worms. Look at them all. I would think that the moisture dripping out of this is just as appetizing to them. So to hang out right below something like that cob where the feeding is occurring and just picking up all the drippings, I could see that as being a real appealing place for the worms to be. Alright, so major disruption here, removing that cob. Just going to move all the worms that were there off to the side and create a little pit for this apple. I'll just bring this gooey piece of corn cob back in. There are a few banana peels in here. Equally appetizing. I don't remember ever feeding with apples though, so I'm not certain what to expect from that. We'll see. And a handful of asparagus for them. Little chill factor. The stuff that just came out of the freezer. Fun, fun, fun. Let's give these guys a nice, generous hunk of tomato leaves. Instead of always giving them these dry leaves from leaf collection in the autumn from last year, I figure these nice fresh tomato leaves would be a big treat for them. Nice change of pace. Another marker. Cover this thing up. Compost in these containers was harvested 2 weeks ago. The harvesting process was real quick and dirty and paid very little attention to sifting of worms. So the material was far more worm rich than it normally is. I wanted to make sure I give these worms an opportunity to exit the casting material, not to mention also some time for the cocoons and eggs in this material to also hatch and allow all the baby worms to exit the castings. So here, just taking a peek down through the tomato leaves that we fed with last time. What's this? Seems to be a nice nice jumble of worms making their way through the tomato leaves already. Not bad. And I'll use the center. You know what? In this case, I'd like to spread out the apple. I'm not even certain how well it's going to work because I don't remember ever using apple before. But instead of putting it in one place, I figured opening it up this way would expose the yummy part of it to them a little bit better. And also spread out the concentration of the food a little bit better. Tomato leaves that we can pile on top here. Create a nice new spot for them to hang out. Okay. Oop, the worms are going to be. So we'll check back in again. Let's just peek around here. More of the same. Coffee. Oh, now down here, just something slimy. This is more food that was laid down low. That feels like a banana peel. I would say that the previous bin showed a lot more activity going on within the tomato leaves than what we see here. It's just time, though, I'm sure. Give it a little bit more time, and we'll see the same stuff happening here as we saw in the other bin. So it breaks apart easy enough. We'll just a fresh banana peel. Yummy, yummy. And we should get these tomato leaves that were in here from previously back in the game before we cover them up with fresh leaves. Get these guys sprinkled in here as well. Right? Okay, the last of the leaves. More or less what we were after today. Got a little bit of moisture collected in this pot since it was outside yesterday and it rained overnight. Right. That's it for today, everybody. Thanks for joining with me and keeping me company while I check in on my worms and on my compost. So I'll take care of making some order here and cleaning up things. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you again next time, hopefully. Thanks for watching. Bye.